All right, today we are doing Lab 8, measuring volume. You'll be using two different methods, the measurement and calculation method, and then the water displacement method. You'll have 6 different objects. You have cubes, bars, and then cylinders. And we want to predict first, what do you think is the least amount of volume to the most amount of volume? Remember, volume means how much space a solid takes up. So if I were to look at these, I would think that maybe the cylinders might have the least amount of volume, the bars might have a little more volume, and then the cubes. So this is my prediction from cylinder to cube, least to most volume. So now we're going to test them. You should have received a 2-method measure volume worksheet. This is where you're going to record your data. In the method used, you would either write measurement and calculation or water displacement. For the measurements, this is where you can record all your measurements in centimeters or milliliters. Here you'll do your formulas and calculate by showing your work. And then last but not least, the volume is the final result you got for that object. So we're going to start with the light gray bar. And we're going to do measurement and calculation. So I know that the bar is a rectangle, and we talked about the formula length times width times height. So I need to measure the length first. So I'm going to take my ruler and measure in centimeters, and I got 5 centimeters for the length. So I'm going to record that on my sheet. Length is 5 centimeters. Then I need my width, which is about 1.2 centimeters. So my width is 1.2 centimeters, and then I have to do my height, which is also 1.2 centimeters. So I'm going to write that down, 1.2. And now my formula is length times width times height. So I'm just going to do 5 times 1.2 times 1.2. I'm going to use my calculator to calculate. And I got about 7.2. So I'm going to put my answer here, 7.2, and my units is centimeters cubed for volume. All right, so that's the measurement and calculation. Now I'm going to take the dark gray bar, and I'm going to use the water displacement method. Usually, we only use the water displacement method if the shape is irregular shape, because we can't measure it like a stone, and then we would use the water displacement, but I'm going to use it so we can practice. So when we do water displacement, we want to fill up the water to a whole number, so I filled it up to 40 milliliters. Remember, when you read, the water line is called the meniscus, and the bottom of the curve is where it should hit 40. So this would be your initial volume at 40 milliliters is my units. Then I'm going to take my object and I'm going to slide it in so it doesn't spill. And I noticed that the water went up because the solid took up more space. So when I read my meniscus, it's about 45, 46, 47, 48 milliliters. So my V final is at 48 milliliters. So my measurements is V initial, V final. And when we do water displacement, we use the formula volume equals V final minus V initial. So I'm going to do 48 minus 40 equals 8. So my final answer would be 8 milliliters for the dark gray bar. Next, we're going to do our cubes. These will not fit in the graduated cylinder, so we're going to do the measurement and calculation method for this. We know that it's a cube, so our formula would be volume equals length times width times height. So I need to, again, measure the length, the width, and the height for these cubes in centimeters. So let's start with the light gray bar. I'm gonna use my ruler, and I found out it was about 2.5 centimeters. And since it's a cube, the length, the width, and the height will all be the same. So 2.5, 2.5. Now I'm also gonna do the cube, the dark gray cube. And again, it's also 2.5. So since it's a cube, the length, the width, and the height are all the same. When I do my calculation, I just have to multiply the number. So 2.5 times 2.5 times 2.5. And then I'm going to calculate it. And I got about 15.6 if we round. 15.6 centimeters cubed, because I used the ruler. Okay. Next, we're going to do the light gray cylinder. We're going to use the water displacement method. All right, so again, I filled up my graduated cylinder to 40 milliliters. So my initial volume is 40. Then I'm going to slide in my cylinder, and we found out that it went up to about 46 milliliters. So when we do our measurements, V initial was 40 milliliters, my V final was 46 milliliters. Then I'm going to subtract, so 46 minus 40 is 6 milliliters, so the cylinder is 6 milliliters. I'm also going to show you the calculation, measurement and calculation way to use a cylinder. Remember that the measurement and calculation for a cylinder is the formula pi times radius squared times height. However, when we do our measurements, we have to find the height and the diameter. You can't really measure the radius because the radius is from the center of the circle to the outside, and we don't know where that center point is. So we're going to find the diameter, which is all the way across, and then we're going to divide it by 2 to get the radius. So if I measure the diameter, I got 1.2 centimeters. So my diameter is 1.2 centimeters, and then I have to divide it by 2, which is 0.6. So my radius is 0.6 centimeters, and now I need to find my height. So I'm going to tilt this down, and I got 5 centimeters for the height. So I'm going to write that down, 5 centimeters, and now I'm going to calculate it. So pi times 0.6 squared is my radius, times 5, which is the height. Remember, if you don't have pi on your calculator, you can always use 3.14. So I'm going to, again, do 0.6 squared times 5, which is my height, times pi. And I got about 5.7 centimeters cubed. So I'm going to put that for my answer, 5.7 centimeters cubed. Now that that's done, I found out all of my solids volumes. So now I need to put them in order from least to greatest. And if you notice here, your cylinders have the smallest volume because they're about 5 to 6 milliliters or centimeters cubed. So these would be the least amount of volume. Then you notice the light gray and dark gray bars. They're about 7 and 8 milliliters and centimeters cubed, so they'll be second in order. And then my cubes are the most amount of volume, so those would be listed last. And remember, centimeter cubed, 1 centimeter cubed is the same as 1 milliliter. So the units will be pretty much the same, so you just have to look at the number.